Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, July 27, 2023, and the time is 6 p.m. We are here for the budget workshop of the Coppell City Council, and there is a quorum present, so I will call the meeting to order. Item number 2, citizens' appearance. Ms. Owens, do we have anyone signed up?
I would like to speak.
All right.
Mayor, or then, if somebody would like to sign up, would you like to speak now? Or do you want to speak at the end?
I just have 2 questions.
Okay, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I need to read these.
Yes, please.
George Paramoff, I live at...
Hold on, okay.
We have some legal.
All right, so person wishing to speak must sign the register and list their address. Presentation by individual shall be limited to 2 minutes each, and individual speaker's time may be extended for an additional 2 minutes with the approval of the majority of the city council member present. Persons signed up to speak will be called in the order they signed up. No personal attack by any speaker shall be made against any member of the council, mayor, individual, group, or corporation. There will be no comments or deliberations from the city council due to the Texas Open Meetings Act. Okay, sir, if you would go ahead and state your name and your address.
Okay, George Paramoff. I live at 1721 East Beltline Road, which is between MacArthur and the Carrollton city limit on East Beltline Road, and we're very conscious, and I have no objection to it, of the dark silver line railway that's being built, but I do have 2 questions. One, before, I know we were not part of DART, and now that the silver line is going to go down to Cypress Waters, which at least part of is considered to be part of Coppell and has a Coppell address, are we now, because of the DART service going to part of Coppell and with a big stop there, are we now part of the DART system? Have we paid any money, or do we pay any money to DART?
Well, yeah, no. Well, we can't really, under the Texas Open Meetings Act, we can't really make comments or deliberations, but
Okay,
I'm sure the staff will give you the answers
I'll
that
make
you
a statement that I
asked.
would appreciate the budget session addressing that question tonight if possible. Okay.
The staff will definitely address your
Okay.
question and kind of
And
give you an
the
update.
second question is, their right-of-way that they must have acquired from us to go across our land, including Southwestern on the other side of Denton Tap, are they paying us any money for the right-of-way? Do we have any income from this silver line now? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for being here and your comment. Okay, item number 3, presentation and discussion regarding the final budget review. Ms. Tehan will present item 3.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This evening I will cover the valuation results, the proposed tax rate. I'll share a comparison of the 2020 or 2022 tax bill versus the 2023 tax bill based on the average value of a residential property. And then at the end, I will share with you the changes that, made since the previous budget workshops. So I'll begin on page 2 of your packet. This is also on the slide. This page, along with the slide, shows the final certified valuation for the tax year 2023 compared to the certified valuation for the tax year of 2022. The result is an increase of 9.25% in the total assessed values for the city. If you recall, I used a growth rate of 6% in the estimates that I provided to you last week, and recalling the seesaw effect, as the values came in higher, so the tax rate that I'm going to show you in a little bit is going to be a little bit lower. We're going to take a deeper dive into the assessed valuations, and so if you will turn to page 3 in your packet, and then some of the information on page 3 is also on the slide. The slide shows you the same information in both table and graph format. On page 3, it's the far right-hand corner or the columns on the right hand show you the 2023 certified taxable values. And again, it's a little over 10.5 billion. Again, it's the 9.25% increase is about 890 million over the 2022 certified values. The table shows you the combined value of all commercial property in Coppell. When you compare it to 2022, the change is an increase of 12.68%. The change in the combined value for the residential properties in Coppell is about 9.53% compared to last year. And then the change in business personal property is an increase of about 3%. As I mentioned last Thursday, I expected that commercial versus residential would come in at 45% commercial, 55% residential, and that is what we're seeing again this year, and that's consistent with previous years. Next, we're gonna, this next slide is the bottom section of page 3 of your packet, and it shows a breakout between new construction and reappraisals. So the last column on this page is what's shown on here, is the last column in your packet on that page. And so what it's showing is that new construction makes up $80.6 million, or about 9% of the increase in value. So of the $890 million increase in value, 80 million of that is from new construction. When you break down new construction a little bit more, commercial makes up about 66 million of that 80 million, or 7.4% of the growth. And then residential accounts for 14.6 million, or about 1.6% of the growth. So again, of the increase, or the increase in values, 80 million of it is from new construction. And then you'll see the next section is reappraisals, and reappraisals are initiated by the appraisal district. Reappraisals make up 758 million, or about 85% of the increase in value, which would be expected based on the market. Commercial makes up about 270 million, or 30% of the increase in growth from reappraisals, and residentials make up 488 million, or about 55% of the growth from reappraisals. The growth in business personal property is about 51 million and represents 5.7%. So are there any questions regarding the valuations, the certified values?
You were supposed to ask a question so I could finish eating. Is the decrease in the value of the agricultural property because the property is being developed as residential or commercial, or was the ag property actually written down?
I don't know.
Okay.
So because I don't get the individual values or the individual properties, I'm just getting summaries.
We just know.
I just know what the total ag is.
Okay, thank you very much.
So then the next area that we're going to look at is the proposed tax rate. So this is page 4 of your packet. This page and the slide show that the tax rate used to prepare the budget, and that the proposed tax rate is 0.493496. The current tax rate is 0.518731. If you recall, the current tax rate was the lowest tax rate since at least 1990. The proposed tax rate now takes that title away, as it will become the lowest tax rate since at least 1990.
1984.
1984. Are there any questions about this page 4?
Councilmember Walters.
Are there any other variables that we can expect from DCAD that would change this? Like the protests that are ongoing?
Well, no. These are the certified values, so that is what you base your tax rate on. And Dallas County provided us with their calculation, because they're technically our tax assessor collector, so they have to sign off on the tax rate, and so they have certified the no new revenue and voter approved rate, and our calculation matched their calculation.
Did they get that done as early as
They got
this
it
time
done
last year?
No.
I was going to say, this is a little...
They were not supposed to get it to us till August 4th,
Okay.
but they got it to us early, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, good.
So-
Good, good.
Cheers.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Anything else? No? Okay. So then, the next slide, I'd like to just, this is a calculation of a tax bill based on the new certified values. It's a slide that you saw last Thursday. It's just been updated to reflect the certified average assessed value. So last time it was based on an estimate. Now it's based on certified values. It's also been updated to reflect the proposed tax rate. And so the change to somebody receiving a homestead exemption is $76 or the $6 per month. I'm also have the same for the over 65 that's also receiving a homestead exemption. The value is different. It's based on the average value of properties receiving the over 65 exemption. And so the value's been updated and the tax rate's been updated. And so now this reflects the expectation of a tax bill, the change in a tax bill for someone receiving over 65. Are there any questions on either of these two slides?
Councilman Rivera.
When did the new senior exemption go into effect? Last year's tax bill or this year's tax
Last
bill?
year's tax bill.
Last year's, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the change from 75 to 100, they would have seen that change?
Last year.
Last year's, got it. Okay, thanks.
Mhm. Anything else?
Councilman Brewer Walker.
Can you explain that to us again about, so the valuation or the tax rate is based only on the other homes that enjoy the same exemption, homestead?
The assessed value is based on, so they tell us there's this many parcels that are receiving the over 65 exemption,
Mhm.
and this is their market value, and this is their assessed taxable value.
Why
So-
do they bunch them together like that?
I think just for analysis purposes,
Okay.
just to let us know how many, a breakout. I mean, they do it for commercial, they do it for over 65, residential.
So the standard homestead exemption is getting a slight increase overall in the actual tax bill, but the senior exemption is getting a slight decrease.
That's correct.
Okay.
So the over 65, the increase in value is only 3.2%, whereas the increase in value of the other is about 8%, 8.5%.
Okay,
And so that's why you're seeing that decline.
okay. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Me? Make sure I'm thinking about this correctly. Back on the difference between commercial and residential valuation, if I added up the numbers on the valuation, and I included business the BPP
Yes.
with commercial,
Yes.
that's a little under 40% of the taxable value in town, if I could see my numbers correctly on my paper.
So if you add up the commercial and the business personal property, it's 45% of the total assessed value.
Okay,
And then residential is 55%.
okay. I've just done my math wrong then. Okay, thanks.
What?
Yeah,
Hard to believe.
surely that wasn't correct.
Councilman Walker.
So isn't that a higher percentage of commercial than we've seen in years past in relation to residential?
No, it's been a 45-55 split for several years.
Okay.
Earlier in like the 80s, 90s, that's when you saw the 80-20, but you didn't have the west side built out, right?
Right, right.
So, but no, it's been, probably have that. Let me see if I can find that information for you.
Well, that's okay, Kim. I mean, that's all right. I was just kind of generally just curious. And so that's been fairly stable though the past several years, particularly when we've been seeing the decrease in the tax rate.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, that's all. That's
Yeah, back in the 90s, the split was 20-80, and then in 2017, it went up to 41% commercial, 59 residential. and then it kind of went to 41.5% to 58.5%, it looks like in 2018. And then 2019 and 2020, it was the 43-57 split. And then since then, it's been the 45-55.
Wow, okay, well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said last year that that's gonna be like that, you expect that to be like that for several years. Right?
We're pretty much built out, so unless you get some more commercial. Okay, any other questions on this portion?
Good.
Then the last thing that I wanted to share with you are the changes that we've made since the previous budget workshops. And so the first change is related to debt service, and obviously we got the certified values in, and we recalculated the proposed tax rate. So the ad valorem taxes that we're showing in debt service is now based on those certified values. So that changed slightly, and that is what we're showing on the summary on page 5. And then the next area that changed, general fund had a few changes. Again, just like debt service, the revenue is based on certified values and the proposed tax rate. So the ad valorem tax, that changed from prior. In addition, expenditures changed. So expenditures actually decreased $83,279. And that is the result of a net of an increase to council's budget for the service organizations, and then it's a decrease in environmental health of $100,000. What we did is removed the the consultant, the amount that we put for the refuge contract consultant. We removed it from their budget and we put it down into assigned fund balance. So that is why the fund balance changed. It now has a line up for $100,000 for a refuge contract consultant. And then there were no changes to water sewer fund, and then the special revenue fund, we just trued up salary and benefits of various funds, and then the hot fund, we made adjustments for the service orgs. And the other item that we did is we made sure that we had the advertising for the art center. And so that concludes my presentation for this evening, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Council, any questions for the staff or any of the?
Yes, I do. I have one thing. If y'all want to ask away y'all's questions first before I get into my thing, please do. If not, I'll dive in. All right, so yesterday afternoon, Chief Barton and I met with Brad Hunt and their new Chief Operating Officer to discuss the SRO, the School Resource Officer situation as a result of HB 3, that the state has mandated that all schools have a basically a officer on each campus. They call it something else. My mind just went blank on
Armed security.
Armed security officer. Thank you. Yeah. And so the law was actually signed on June 14th. So when we went through the crime control district in May, we knew that it was well. We should say the law had passed on the 28th of May for the final vote, and so he signed the bill on the 14th, and during that time, Superintendent Hunt had been talking with their board, had originally met with us, and yesterday we finalized a plan of action, basically what it amounts to. And the idea is that we would split costs with the school district. We would go into the crime control district, so this would be something that y'all would consider on August the 22nd. And what I'm looking for from tonight is the proverbial consensus thumbs up to do that work and adjust the budget to accommodate 8 school resource officers and the equipment and the capital necessary to get them up and running, with the full understanding that the deployment of the officers is completely between the school district and the chief, And specifically knowing that even if we get the budget approved, there will not, we don't have the staff to necessarily meet that immediate demand for all 8 schools on day one. There are provisions in the law that allows the school district's flexibility, so that's something that Superintendent Hunt is going to be working out. The estimated cost for this first year is approximately $1.6 million. That is fully funded as if we had everybody October 1st and we had all the equipment and we had all the vehicles that go along with that. It's not going to happen that way, just from a logistics standpoint. Chief Barton's working with the employee experience team to see if there's some creative ways to attract. More than likely, this is going to be potentially retired officers, that would go into the schools, but not necessarily. The chief operating officer yesterday put it in perspective. He said there was a report out that this law has created the demand of about 100,000 new officers across the state of Texas. So demand completely outstrips supply. So I think I mentioned before, we read where Dallas needs 458 officers to meet their demand. So with the concurrence of the council, we will prepare the budget for the crime control district for your consideration on August the 22nd. So with that really concludes my presentation.
Councilman Carroll.
Clarifying the cost, 1.6 million, is that the total cost and then we will pay half of that, or is that our?
No, that's the total,
piece?
that's the total cost.
Total cost of
So
everything.
what you'll see in the budget is the total cost, then you'll see the revenue like you do right now that comes from ISD. It'll show their half of that cost. And then for the capital, for the equipment and the vehicles and so forth, that'll all come out of the crime control's fund balance. From an operational standpoint, when you project to next year, you saw that we were operating in the black. And so when you take out the capital cost and everything along those lines, you include their revenue for next year, it'll be, because we're operating under 334, it'll be really tight, but we can do it.
So 1.6 total, I'm doing very rough numbers. But no,
Just about half of that's in personnel.
Okay, 800 for operations,
Mhm.
let's say 800 for capital.
For these 8 more, right?
Right, and CISD is splitting the cost for capital also?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so
It's total
completely
cost.
50% of the
Right.
total, okay. So we're only talking 800 this year, and it ought to be ongoing, roughly 400, I mean, just do easy math.
Yes.
For us?
Yes.
For our piece, okay. All right, thanks.
So, for anyone who asks a question, just want to mention that they're still working the details, and the logistic-wise, because of the security sensitivity, there might be some questions that he might not be ready to answer. But any other, I guess, the finance that you asked about,
Right.
any other question that you want to ask? Councilmember Walker.
Thanks, I appreciate that reminder. So, does the law mandate that each officer, ASO, be a licensed peace officer in the state of Texas?
Yes.
Okay. So it would require.
They have a provision for a marshal program. So that's a detail I don't
Yeah,
fully.
they have to
They
have-
have some provisions, but you basically have to have a license. You have to have some certification. There is a marshal program.
Yeah, the section 37.0814 talks about school district police officer, resource officer, commissioned police officer employed as a security personnel, school marshal, district employee who has completed school safety training, and so on and so on. So those could be exceptions, because obviously they're going to be running low on some of the officers to have at the polling locations.
And, yeah, that's amazing. Hopefully there'll be plenty of people show up. So how does that affect, like looking back a few years, this is kind of cutting you cold, Mike, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but looking back a few years, how would that, deducting that $800,000 from the crime control fund, now that we have an additional expense, Am I looking at that correctly?
Well,
We're spending an $800,000 that we haven't spent in the past, or had to spend in the past, so,
well, I think there's two layers to that question.
thank you, okay. I'm glad you appreciate that.
I think there are two layers to it. There's the startup, right?
Right.
So the startup is the bigger chunk.
Okay,
And so for the capital and the equipment and everything, that's going to be coming out of the fund, let's call it the fund balance for the crime control district.
okay.
From an operational standpoint, prior to your election, last year, we moved how many personnel out of the crime control district? 9? Over to the general fund because of 334, anticipating 334. So they were there, and they were in the operations and maintenance cost, but we moved them out anticipating that we could be losing those funds. So this year in the budget process, it doesn't have those 9 in, and again, I think it's 9, right, Kim?
Well, we went from 19 to 13 to 7, so.
Okay, well, it's even more. But when you look at the fund, the positive being in the black this year, once they're removed, I think we're to the good about 470,000 or something along those lines off the top of my head. So knowing that that number will grow over time, because personnel costs grow over time, it appears that we can handle it in the crime control fund. If we can't, we'll figure out how to get it done.
Well, and hopefully the sales tax collection might also.
Yeah, I mean, all this is come January, this all be, say we're successful, it becomes a moot point,
Yeah.
at least for another 2 years.
Right, right. Okay, I appreciate the.
Does that help?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay.
Councilmember Carroll?
So just to, I guess my 2 cents, I'm good with the go-ahead, and this, the way I rationalize it, if I'm reading the numbers correctly, we're showing a projected net of $450,000 in crime control is what we budgeted. That would cover the 400, roughly, I'm
Our
doing
portion, right.
rough numbers. Our portion of the 400 cost for the operations, the other 400 of our cost for the capital would come out of the roughly $23 million fund balance in this fund.
Correct.
So it sounds like we have flexibility. One of my big things is always public work, public safety. Those are the 2 things we got to get right, and we got to do them right, and that's what the city's here to do. So I say all that to say I'm in favor of giving you the go-ahead and everything, so.
Mike, I meant to ask you one question. I know we talked about 8 resource officers that's needed to fulfill all the.
The schools
empty,
in
right.
Coppell that do not currently have them.
Right, and the section actually says at least 1 armed officers. We don't have any need for additional officers, like for example, high school, right?
The chief has not said we need any additional.
Any other questions or comments? Or if not, I know Mike, if everyone's in support, we need to give.
Yeah, I need that
direction to
proverbial
Mike
thumbs up or.
For them to go back and, I guess, budget accordingly and bring it back.
Gotta do it.
Councilmember Neville.
No, I'll just comment that it is unfortunate that Austin, mandates these things, and then they're like, well, you go figure out how to pay for it. And I know that they're providing a little bit of funding there, but I definitely appreciate the relationship that we have with Coppell ISD. I want to make sure that we're able to help out where we can, and I just personally I gladly support this. Just wish this. I'm just going on record to say I wish the state would kick in a little bit more on supporting that and helping our school district out. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but I think that as Councilmember Carroll said, public safety is I think a priority for a lot of us on this council, and making sure that our young people are safe. So if that's what the state says we need to do, I wholeheartedly support this endeavor, and I want to make sure that we are able to comply. Mike, I do have one question for you on this, just in terms of, I know we've done compensation studies in the past, relatively recently. All I can think about is that demand, that groundswell of demand that is now happening, and so I'm just kind of thinking out loud, which I know is dangerous, but is that something that we need to visit earlier than our standard schedule to make sure that we stay competitive in this now increasingly competitive market, to make sure that we fund, that we can get the people that we need to fund? And just kind of thinking out loud to you about that.
I mean, we've had that discussion. Last year was the big movement for the market for us in our overall pay plan. So we feel strongly about where we are. We know that folks are moving.
Mhm.
And next year, as part of the process, the EX will be doing an update to that. So we'll have a chance to look at it. The other thing to remember too, while there's tremendous demand, not every officer is cut out to be a school resource officer. And it's a mutual relationship between the school, the PD, and so while there is great demand, it's just not a matter of any officer can go in that school and be successful. So that's the reason why they're talking about trying to be creative in the recruiting, because there is, if you will, a characteristic and values and things that go on that, to put those adults with a gun in the school.
Absolutely. Well, just figured I would just
Yeah.
vocalize that just to kind
No,
of.
we'll be doing the update, I guess, in the spring. Is that when they, okay, right.
Yes.
Yeah, this coming fiscal year, we have budgeted funds to do that.
Okay, excellent. All right, with that, all that being said, I'm in favor of supporting this.
Councilmember Walker.
Yeah, it's long bothered me that we haven't had armed resource officers in the elementary schools, and so I'm fully supportive of doing that now.
We have thumbs up? So we have
Okay,
all
good.
good to go?
That we'll work on it.
Okay, you done?
Yeah. Yes, I am. No more talkie for me.
Okay, so next on the item is citizens' appearance. Ms. Owens, did we have anybody else sign up during the
Anybody like to
meeting?
speak?
Anybody
Come
else
on.
want to speak? If you have not signed up. Okay, well, very good one.
Another listening, yeah.
You just want to tell Mayor Mays that you're crushing his records.
There being no further business before council, we are adjourned at 6:33 p.m.
He loved to write that down, didn't he?